Sasha, welcome. Please have a seat. I'm laughing because this is a live event and the chairs were just like not moving fast enough. So bear with us. But this is fun. Thank you so much for being here, Sasha.
No, it's my pleasure. It's really great to be here.
Thank you.
Talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart.
So why don't you introduce yourself and
Sure.
talk a little bit about the evolution of decision making, the context that led you to think about decision intelligence.
Sure. So for those of you online and those of you in the room, my role at Dell is really to help lead our data analytics and automation efforts. So when we think about our supply chain, it's really about ensuring that we have the right data in the right hands for people to make the right decisions. And then to be able to really, quite frankly, automate those decisions in a really effective manner to make sure that we're meeting our customers' needs and opportunities. So we've been on this journey for quite some time, spending a lot of time around infusing and making sure our data is healthy, thinking about and starting to build significant models to help us identify decision points that really will drive effectiveness within our supply chain and with our partners. And what we realized a couple of years back was that it wasn't going to be sufficient enough just to have the answers coming out of our AI ML models. We really needed to also start to think about the quality of the decisions that were being made, assisting people with those decisions. And when we saw a pattern of decisions that were the same, how might we be able to start to really automate those decisions and orchestrate action against those decisions? So we were actually on a path, right, to really start building that layer or that next layer of capability.
So you mentioned you've been on the journey for, I think, 3 years, and we got a chance to start working together about a year ago, right?
Yes.
So you basically are a bit less than a year, actually, on the journey.
About 9 months, 10 months,
Yep. So can you share with us, again, where you are on the journey and what results you're already seeing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, we've been on this journey, as you said, quite a while. And we'd always taken the position that, look, we knew we needed to be building it, and we had some amazing developing teams inside our four walls, but we also kept an eye outside to say, hey, was there somebody out there that might be able to help us accelerate what it was that we were already attempting to do? And when we had an opportunity to meet with some of your folks earlier in the year, we're like, oh my goodness, maybe there really is something there to this, right? And we had a hypothesis that the solution might be able to help us accelerate both the, I'll say kind of the AI around our decision processes, as well as help us to accelerate the orchestration of those decision processes back into our transactional applications. And so that's what started our journey with you, right? Is we had this hypothesis that you could help us on those two fronts. We picked a very, very, I would say, stable process and product within our organization. And we really just embarked on, hey, let's just prove it out. Can it really help us make these decisions and to learn from those decisions? And number one. And number two, was it really capable of helping us to be able to automate and orchestrate those solutions, right? And so we've been live now roughly about 90 days with our first skill, which is very short amount of time, right? We went from first quarter to now to actually being live. And I think for us, what we've seen is that hypothesis of could it help us work is really working, right? I'm excited to say at this point we've got greater than a 90% acceptance rate around these decisions, and we are quite frankly a bit bullish in terms of, all right, how do we start to now take this innovation capability that's helped to accelerate our journey and now apply it to other product categories, other regions, and really build.
So you started the journey, I think the implementation around March or mid-March.
Yeah, I think we stood up the formal team.
Yep.
March, April-ish.
March, April.
Yeah.
And you were pretty much live, you said 90 days ago,
Yeah.
like in August.
Yeah.
And the system is delivering volumes of decisions.
Yeah, so we hit as of last week, I think north of 600 decisions that have been automated, right, and supported through the solution, which is pretty significant.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yep. That's fantastic. And how do you drive adoption? How do you measure value? So you have the volume of decisions per day, per month that's being generated. You measure the level of acceptance and automation. We have to mention that the system actually executes the decisions that are being made either automatically or with the input of one of your operators. But how do you drive that adoption? How do you measure value? How did you go through that journey?
Yeah,
or you're going through that?
We're going through that journey. But look, there are 4 key measures that we're using to really value the opportunity that we have here. The first is, to your point, around adoption. So one of the things that we recognized early on is that this is not a solution that you can build behind closed doors and then throw it over the wall. It really is the kind of capability that you need to be developing with your business community, and recognizing that with the use of this kind of capability, the jobs that have been done versus the jobs that are going to be done are very different, right? So learning in terms of the organizational construct as well as the technology construct at the same time. So the first measurement that we use is truly adoption. Are people actually supportive of what they're seeing? Do they believe in the responses that are, or the answers that are coming out of the solution? Are they right fit for that particular business question, right? And we've seen significant, I would say, acceptance of that criteria. The second is the decision quality that's coming out of high value opportunity to us, right? And how accurate is that solution? So that's the second area that we look at. The third is the speed. Right, so are we actually seeing truly a truncation in terms of that cycle time of how we get to an answer?
Yeah.
And then last but not least, right, is really the automation of those decisions. To your point, right, how often are we actually allowed to, as we say, right, move people from being in the loop, on the loop, to truly besides the loop? How often are we actually really able to just take our hands off of the steering wheel and let the solution really make those decisions for us, push it down into our transactional applications, and let people focus on other areas of the business?
Did you start by digitizing decisions that were currently being made by your operators, or did you take an area where you knew the decisions could not be made because of volume or velocity and decided to digitize that?
Yeah, so for us, we started with our proof of concept and decisions we knew were already being made by the organization, right? Because really we were trying to test the hypothesis, could this work for us? And now we're at a place where, like, okay, we know it will work, where we have decisions, and now can we start to play in some areas where maybe we haven't really gotten to those decision areas.
And when you released the first skill, you went in for your operators, and I know we did some testing. And what was the reaction of the operators initially? Because you're now talking about potentially digitizing not the task, but the decision that they're making. Yeah. What was the initial reaction, and how did that evolve?
Yeah, and so I think this gets to the comment I made earlier about this being an organizational shift, not just a technology shift, right? So we, from the get-go, as we were starting to think about the use of this technology, we actually took users, in this case, right, the skill that we built involved folks out of our logistics organization, our planning organization as well, and we created a pod, right, with these folks in mind, where the decision was being populated, and then this pod actually could say, yeah, this actually
Tell us about the
works,
pod. How many
right?
people did you have in there?
So we have 3 people in the pod from 3 different functional areas across the organization. And the intention was, look, if the machine actually is making the right decision based off of those triangulated decision points, then why do we actually really need to think about having 3 separate decisions? We can now have one decision point. And now we're at a place where we're starting to really think about, okay, if we've got a really high acceptance rate and we're really just looking at those things that are the exception, how can the system then help us orchestrate where needed to the right level, as opposed to having 3 different processes, 3 different roles, really leaning into it.
So that means
very different.
Improvement in your processes, a change in your organization, potential impact on talent and what you want from the team, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay. And how do you feel about questions we get a lot, augmenting, meaning the system analyzes the data, delivers the recommendation, and you go in front of the operator for decision, versus full automation?
Yeah.
We're seeing a shift in the market today where a lot of our customers are saying we need to go toward full automation because the flow of decision that we have to make is such that we prefer to go full automation. What is your thought process on this?
So, I mean, look, every supply chain around the world is very unique, right? And what we know about supply chains, and what we've learned, all of us, over the last 3 to 4 years with I don't know how many black swan events that have happened, is that they're going to be events that are going to truly rock the core of your supply chain capability. So while you might have the best intention around what those decisions are, I would say on an average day, and how that needs to flow through your system, the reality is we also need to be able to step in when those decisions have exceptions to them. So for us, right, it is about truly being able to fully automate, I would say, when you've got a process that is in control. And then to be able to truly bring up quickly those scenarios that are not in control, and to assist folks in terms of making better decisions when they see those exceptions pop, right? And I think that's one of the things for us that we're learning is an opportunity to understand when we've made similar decisions, given similar dynamics in the past, what is the potential outcome to assist us in making the decision this time.
Yep.
So I don't believe that we will ever get to 100% automation. I think that's a fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably going to follow more of the 80-20 rule, right? That the bulk of the business is probably going to be able to be automated in a very significant way. But we will continue to see these edge cases as businesses change their operating processes, as events happen outside of the world, partnering with your suppliers, understanding your customers, right? I think we have to understand and really provide a space to allow for that flexibility.
Do you see this as there will be periods of time where the flow of decision can be almost fully automated because your business is stable and the machine can take over, and periods of time where actually you need to put your hands back on the wheel to actually make specific decisions? Is that the way you're thinking about it?
Yeah, I think that's right. But I would actually take it one level down, which is that there are probably processes within that overarching environment where it really can be fully automated, and potentially processes where, quite frankly, you really need more decision support, right?
Yeah.
That is a strategic advantage to your given supply chain. And I think that's what we're seeing is the flexibility to not think about this as a full automation end to end, but to be able to truly automate and take our hands off the steering wheel for those pieces of our processes that we know work, regardless of these shocks. And for those places where there are potential shocks, to make sure that people can put their hands back on the steering wheel and to have that support.
It's funny how I always go back to the self-driving car analogy, but it's the one that works the best. It's been working with us for 6 years, and that video we just showed earlier, but it's the way we wanted to explain this concept of, in the loop, on the loop, and out of the loop. There are moments where you can let go. You're going on the straight, the car can drive itself, and there are moments where you need to take control, and you can make decisions. And the technology that we built, actually, and we'll talk about this later in the presentation, really accommodates for those three modes. You can actually make a simulation and a what if based on the data that you have in the system, or you can decide how to let go. And that goes back to the point about letting people guide the system. We had to come up with the technology to enable that process as well. So
I think the one piece I might add, right, is it's not just about making the decision. It's also about what happens after you've made that decision and executing that decision, right? And so for us, right, we had two hypotheses. One, could it help us make better decisions? And then the second was, could it help us orchestrate that decision at a faster pace than we were able to do in quote unquote our normal day of life? And so I think this is really critical, right? It's not just about getting to the right decision, then it's about, okay, well, what action was taken against that decision? And I think that's really important, that you go full circle.
Yeah, and you're right. I think we tend to focus on the decision making, but not mention enough the decision execution. I was sharing the stage at a conference recently with one of our other clients. They said, look, the time it takes to make that decision is 2 days. So it's a fairly complex process. The time it takes to execute the decision is 3 days. And Aera basically made that completely digital. So the execution part can be 100% digital.
Yeah.
Like the system can automate 100% of the execution.
Yeah.
The decision-making part, this is where you want to be able to say whether I'm instructing the system, doing my own simulation, or letting the system come up with the recommendation. That's a very, very good point. So glad you brought it up. Yeah. Looking forward, we were together not that long ago in our Mountain View office with your team. It was a great session. We call that a Jupiter session for 2 days. And you came up with a pretty aggressive roadmap, skills roadmap, 50 plus skills, 22 streams. Can you talk without sharing the things you don't want to share, obviously? No. But can you talk a little bit what's next in the journey? You validated the system for decision making on the loop, in the loop, out of the loop. You validated the system for decision execution. You got adoption working, you got value identified. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. So for those of you who may know, right, I was in healthcare for several decades before switching over to technology, and people often ask me, well, what's the big difference between the two industries? And my first comment is, well, within kind of the healthcare industry, right, if you make the wrong decision, somebody's going to die. In technology, if we make the wrong decision, not fast enough, we die, right? So what I think we have seen through this proof of concept, quite frankly, is a convergence of both having the right quality of decision as well as the speed of decision. And so for us, we've now said, look, we see the potential value here to truly be able to expand both to decisions that we know are already being made within our organization, but also start to experiment with those that are at the edge case, where we're not yet playing, to help accelerate that as well. So part of our book of work, if you will, that we're looking at in terms of the skills and the use cases truly is a very rapid expansion in terms of the capability that we're seeing and how we're standing it up. I would say the other piece to this is really taking a hard look in terms of how we're building our teams to be able to accelerate this work very, very rapidly, and really spending time internally in terms of what are the value opportunities around these different use cases as well, so that we're solving the right things in the right sequence.
Yeah, and I have to say, being a witness of the work, the way Dell works, it's a machine.
Yeah.
When you guys set yourself on something, the execution happens very fast. So when you talk about speed, there's real speed. I think you took a longer-term roadmap and you kind of shrunk it into a shorter timeline to try to get more results right away.
Well, look, it's in our DNA, right? We've been a world-class and leading supply chain organization, and we have every intent of continuing to do that. And one of the things we recognize is speed to value.
There's one interesting thing that maybe I should have mentioned earlier, is that when companies approach us, they usually say, we're thinking about decision intelligence for this aspect of our supply chain. It's a demand, it's a procurement, it's an inventory, it's whatever problem. And they stay focused on that. You guys approached us saying, we don't really care where we start. We're thinking about this frictionless supply chain end to end, within the definition that we've got today and maybe beyond, which is what you're talking about. And your approach was, maybe it's because you started on that journey 3 years back, was to look at a solution for that end-to-end as opposed to a point solution. Now, you did test the solution on a point approach, but now it's coming back that you're looking at it really end-to-end.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, right, is how are you defining the problem?
Yeah.
And then how are you thinking about the technologies like Aera, et cetera, that you're instituting into that solution to help drive that vision. And for us, it was never about just go solve one small problem. It was really looking at it from the standpoint of that value stream, that user experience, and ultimately, how is it driving a differentiated experience for our customer at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's quite remarkable. So Sasha, you've got people online and a few folks in the room as well that are wondering where to start and what would be the advice that you would give to them.
So I think first and foremost, it's get comfortable being uncomfortable. This is a new space, right? So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that you have to really be very clear around what is the problem you're trying to solve, and is your organization really at a place that's ready for decision intelligence, right? And then with that, coupled with that, is you got to be really honest with yourself around both the availability and the health of the access of the data that's going to be needed to be able to solve those problems. It's gasoline that's going to run the engine, right? So that's the other point to this. I think the other piece is a recognition that this really is not just a technology implementation. It truly is a different way of working, and so be aware of what I call the human aspect, the organizational construct that needs to surround it as well. So those would be the key things that I would lean into. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. Okay. On those words, Sasha, thank you so much for being here, for the partnership, for your leadership, and to many more Steerco like we do every so often, to many more Jupiter experience, and great success to you. Thank you so much. Perfect. Great.
Thank you.